What does an M1 Garand have in common with a microwave? They both go ping when they're done. Vanguard weapons, notorious for being absolute balancing nightmares due to their absurd scaling with attachments. Prior to this season, there were only 3 Vanguard weapons, the MG42 and the BP50, which have made ranked a complete cesspool, along with the machine pistol, which has completely trivialized its entire category as the best overall pistol. So how does CODM's 4th Vanguard weapon, the M1 Garand, fare in comparison? Well, let's just say that the M1 Garand is the perfect example of stats versus practicality. Here's why. If any of you have looked at the stats of this weapon, the first thing that you'll notice is that it has a near identical damage profile to that of the Odin. The only differences being that its potential 2-tap range is about 5 meters longer, and the addition of a stomach multiplier, which makes 2-taps quite a bit more consistent, especially in the initial range, as you don't have to aim quite as high. The M1 Garand also has the fastest fire rate cap of all of the DMRs at 500 rounds per minute, which is identical to that of the Man-O-War. Now, most players can't actually tap this fast on a consistent basis, and even if you could, you will never reach a max fire rate due to input delay, so your practical fire rate is going to be a lot closer to that of the Odin. You can actually observe this by going into the Battle Royale training range and putting on the Gold Sniper Expert mod, which converts into full auto. You'll notice that the weapon fires quite a bit faster than you ever could achieve in semi-auto. Nevertheless, this still gives you an impressive time to kill potential. Since this is a marksman rifle, the M1 Garand is not subject to bullet spread accuracy, but instead has aim shake, in which your recoil will deviate slightly from the intended pattern, much like the Type 63. But just like the Type 63, it is still very accurate since its recoil is very low in general, and when you combine this with a good hit scan range, means that it is very reliable at longer ranges. It also has fairly competitive hit flinch, being in between the Type 63 and the SKS, which means that you can use this fairly reliably in the more aggressive encounters. Speaking of which, its mobility is the slowest out of all of the DMRs due to the lack of mobility boosting attachments, so you'd want to switch your secondary for longer rotations. Although its ADS and sprint to fire times are on par with a lot of the assault rifles, which allows you to react relatively fast and make use of that time to kill potential. Despite the in-game description calling it a 16-round mag, the M1 Garand's magazine capacity is 20, which is standard for DMRs. Although given the higher fire rate and lower damage, you will find yourself reloading quite a bit more often. Its reload time is fairly standard for DMRs. Some of you might look at this weapon and go, an Odin, but with better 2-tap consistency, recoil, and even a slightly faster fire rate, sounds like a downright good time to be. Well, yes, but actually no. See, this is where the whole thing about stats versus practicality comes into play. While yes, it does look very good on paper, what it doesn't take into account is the fact that it's semi-automatic. This is a problem for 2 main reasons. Firstly, its fire rate is completely reliant on your trigger finger, which means that it's not going to be very consistent, especially in the heat of battle. And unless you want to give yourself early onset arthritis, you are not going to be firing at a max speed for an extended duration. And second, as I've mentioned previously, even if you can tap at the maximum speed, you'll never actually reach the fire rate cap due to the input delay in between shots. So even though the game states that it has a potential time to kill of 120 milliseconds, it's going to look more like 140 milliseconds. For the majority of players out there, what you end up looking at is an Odin that is way harder to use, but with not that many advantages in return, which leads to its questionable viability. The M1 Garand has basically the same range as the Odin, so it wants you to play in the same way, but at that point, why not just use an Odin or a LAC-53, which are way easier to use and with similar reward. And if you're going to use it for mid to longer ranges, it gets flat out dominated by guns like the Type 63, the SKS, the M67A Max, and the AS-Val with FMJ, which have way better lethality at range. But for the small minority of players out there, and I'm talking like top 5% of the entire player base, who can use this effectively and consistently, this weapon's actually not that bad, since it has a very good time to kill profile and very low recoil, the combination of which being very hard to go wrong with. As for Battle Royale, you'll experience a very similar issue. While yes, you do have an impressive time to kill profile, you'll have to spam the fire rate button for even longer than multiplayer due to the increased health. Now I know some of you guys are going to leave this in the comments. Yes, putting on the Gold Sniper Expert mod turns it into a better Odin. But think of it this way, if your gun needs the effect of a gold mod, which is not the easiest to find by the way, that is, objectively speaking, not a good gun. And even if you do manage to find the Gold Sniper Expert mod, you still have to worry about the fact that it takes sniper ammo, which is much lower in supply and drop rate. Combine this with its faster fire rate, means that you will be burning through your ammo reserves quite often. Now we can get into the builds. For multiplayer, start with the 16-round drums for improved fire rate, magazine capacity, and recoil, the MX silencer for concealment, the Cooper 21-inch shrouded for range and bullet speed, and the CGC G2 padded for a reduced hit flinch. As for your last attachment, you can either use an optic of preference for better visibility or the disable perk for the slow and hit, both of which will make staying on target much easier. As for Battle Royale, the build is very similar: 6.5 Sakura 16-round drums, Cooper 21-inch shrouded, and the CGC G2 padded for the same reasons as before, along with an optic of preference for better visibility at range, and the G28 compensator to further improve recoil. The recommended mods are Long Range, Sniper Expert, and Extended Mag. That just about covers everything there is to know about the M1 Garand. Let us know your thoughts on the weapon in the comments below. Leave a like and subscribe if you found the video helpful. Going dark.